The neon sign of the hollowed-out Chevron station flickered, casting a sickly green glow across the cracked pavement of Route 119. It was late at night in Rockford County, a wealthy, sprawling suburban enclave where the property taxes were high, and the police department's budget was heavily inflated. The air was crisp, biting with the chill of the season, and the station was completely devoid of life, save for a single Mercedes-Benz GLE idling by pump number 4. Standing beside the luxury SUV was Kendra Sterling. To the criminal underworld she had infiltrated over the past 6 months, she was Chloe Davis, a high-rolling logistics coordinator for a regional drug syndicate. To the United States Department of Justice, however, she was Special Agent Kendra Sterling, one of the FBI's most decorated undercover operatives. Kendra leaned against the cold metal of her vehicle, pumping premium fuel while staring blankly at the rolling numbers on the digital display. She was utterly exhausted. The undercover operation had drained her, requiring her to maintain a flawlessly ruthless persona around dangerous cartel lieutenants. She was on her way back to a safe house after a grueling sit-down with a target named Victor Kane. All she wanted was to finish fueling, grab a terrible cup of gas station coffee, and sleep for a day. But Rockford County had other plans. Headlights cut through the darkness as a dark gray Dodge Charger cruiser turned sharply into the station. It did not pull up to a pump. Instead, the patrol car accelerated aggressively, tires screeching slightly before slamming on the brakes, angling itself perfectly to block the Mercedes in. There were no flashing sirens, no emergency lights, just the blinding glare of high beams aimed directly at Kendra's face. Kendra did not flinch. Decades of training kicked in instantly. She kept her hands clearly visible, resting them lightly on the gas nozzle, and narrowed her eyes against the piercing light. The heavy doors of the cruiser opened in unison. Out stepped 2 officers wearing the dark navy uniforms of the Rockford County Sheriff's Department. The driver, Deputy Vance Riggs, was a heavy-set man in his late 30s with a military buzz cut and a perpetual sneer. His partner, Deputy Tyler Brooks, was taller, leaner, and had his right hand resting casually, yet deliberately, on the butt of his holstered sidearm. Kendra recognized the type immediately. The FBI's Civil Rights Division had an entire cabinet dedicated to departments like Rockford County. In fact, a peripheral objective of Kendra's current operation involved investigating local law enforcement's complicity in the cartel's supply chains. The names Riggs and Brooks had explicitly appeared in wiretaps. They were notorious for targeting minorities driving expensive vehicles, a practice silently endorsed by their superior, Captain Ellis Montgomery. "Evening," Riggs barked, his voice echoing loudly in the quiet night. He swaggered toward the pump, stopping just a few feet from Kendra, invading her personal space. Brooks hung back near the rear bumper of the Mercedes, his eyes darting around the empty lot. "Is there a problem, officer?" Kendra asked, her voice steady, modulated to sound mildly annoyed but cooperative. Riggs let out a dry, condescending chuckle. He looked the Mercedes up and down, then looked directly at Kendra. "Nice ride. Does not look like a rental. Whose car is this?" "It is mine," Kendra replied evenly. "Yours, huh?" Riggs took a step closer, the heavy scent of stale tobacco radiating from his uniform. "You are a long way from the city. What brings you out to Rockford late at night?" "Just passing through on my way home," Kendra said, her face an unreadable mask. Beneath the collar of her designer coat, a microscopic wire was actively transmitting every word back to a surveillance van parked down the highway. Her overwatch, Agent Warren Talbot, was listening to every single breath. Passing through, Riggs repeated, exchanging a knowing glance with Brooks. "Well, we have had a rash of vehicle thefts in this area recently, specifically luxury SUVs. You would not happen to know anything about that, would you?" "I would not," Kendra said. She calmly removed the fuel nozzle and placed it back on the pump, twisting the gas cap shut. "I have just paid for my gas, and I would like to leave now. Am I being detained?" Riggs's sneer vanished, replaced by a hardened, aggressive scowl. He hated when citizens knew the terminology. He hated it even more when it came from someone he deemed beneath him. "Hand over your license, registration, and proof of insurance," Riggs ordered, his tone dropping an octave. Now, Kendra slowly reached into her coat pocket, deliberately telegraphing her movements to ensure they could not claim she was reaching for a weapon. She retrieved her alias wallet and handed over the expertly forged driver's license of Chloe Davis, along with the vehicle's paperwork. Riggs snatched the cards from her hand. He did not even look at the registration. He just stared at the license, then at Kendra, his eyes dark with unwarranted hostility. "Stay exactly where you are," he commanded, turning his back and walking to the cruiser to run her information. Brooks remained outside, stepping closer to the passenger side of the Mercedes. He pulled out a heavy Maglite flashlight and began shining it aggressively through the tinted windows, tapping the heavy metal casing against the glass. "Careful with the paint," Kendra warned softly. Brooks paused, shining the beam directly into her eyes. "Keep your mouth shut," he snapped. In the surveillance van down the highway, Agent Warren Talbot gripped the edge of his console. "Kendra, this is Talbot." His voice crackled softly in her microscopic earpiece. "Running their plates now. Riggs and Brooks both have excessive force complaints a mile long. You want local units to roll in?" Kendra pressed her tongue against the roof of her mouth, a double click that registered on Talbot's end as a hard no. She was currently holding a royal flush, and these corrupt deputies were blindly pushing all their chips to the center of the table. She wanted them to show their true colors entirely. She wanted the federal indictment to be absolutely bulletproof. Inside the cruiser, the terminal pinged. Riggs stared at the screen. The name Chloe Davis returned as a known associate of flagged individuals, but with 0 active warrants. For a dirty cop, this was the holy grail. It meant the woman in front of him had ties to dirty money, but no immediate legal protection. She was a ghost, a perfect target for extortion. A sinister smile crept across Riggs's face as he exited the patrol car. Riggs walked back to the pump, the heavy thud of his boots echoing against the concrete. He did not hand the license back. Instead, he slipped it into his breast pocket. "Well, Chloe," Riggs said, using her alias with a mocking familiarity. "Looks like your name popped up on a few interesting lists. Associate of some bad people. There are no warrants out for my arrest," Kendra stated, her legal knowledge precise. "Return my identification and move your vehicle." "I do not think you understand the situation you are in," Riggs replied, stepping so close Kendra could feel the heat radiating from him. "Step out from behind the door. Move to the front of the vehicle and put your hands on the hood." "Under what suspicion?" Kendra asked, holding her ground. "A traffic stop requires reasonable suspicion of a crime. You have not articulated one." "Stop talking," Brooks suddenly barked, stepping around the back of the car and grabbing Kendra roughly by the bicep. The sudden physical contact was jarring. Brooks's grip was violently tight, his fingers digging painfully into her arm. He forcefully yanked her away from the pump and shoved her against the hood of the Mercedes. The cold metal bit into her cheek. "Kendra, they are going hands-on!" Talbot's voice buzzed urgently in her ear. "Say the word. We are moving in." Kendra did not respond. She allowed Brooks to spread her legs, kicking her ankles apart with the heavy toe of his boot. He patted her down roughly, thoroughly crossing the line of a standard Terry frisk. "She is clean on her person," Brooks muttered. "Toss the car," Riggs ordered. "You do not have my consent to search this vehicle," Kendra said loudly and clearly, ensuring the microphone picked up every syllable. "This is an illegal search in violation of the Fourth Amendment." "Look around, sweetheart," Riggs laughed cruelly, gesturing to the desolate, empty highway. "Do you see a judge anywhere out here? Because all I see is a known associate of a drug ring who was swerving violently across the double yellow line." "Oh, and look at that, Brooks. Did you smell the marijuana when we pulled up?" "Sure did." Brooks lied seamlessly, pulling the driver's side door open. "They were manufacturing probable cause right on the audio recording." Kendra lay against the hood, her mind calculating the exact federal charges. Title 18, United States Code, Section 242, Deprivation of Rights under color of law. They were digging a hole they would never climb out of. Brooks tore through the pristine interior of the Mercedes. He ripped the contents of the glove box out, scattering insurance papers and napkins onto the floor mats. He checked under the seats, in the center console, and finally, he popped the trunk. Well, well, well. Brooks's voice drifted from the back of the SUV. Look what we have here. Riggs stepped away from Kendra and walked to the trunk. Inside, resting beneath a spare tire cover, was Kendra's locked briefcase. Brooks took a crowbar from his belt and wedged it into the combination lock, brutally prying it open with a loud snap of breaking metal. Inside the briefcase were two things: banded cash provided by the FBI for her undercover buys, and her standard-issue Glock 19 resting securely in a holster. Jackpot, Riggs breathed. He picked up a stack of $100 bills, thumbing through them with greedy, wide eyes. Then he looked at the firearm. To them, it was not a federal agent's weapon. It was an unregistered gun belonging to a criminal. Riggs walked slowly back to the front of the car, holding the Glock in his right hand and a stack of cash in his left. His demeanor had shifted from aggressive to terrifyingly calm. He was a predator who had just trapped his prey. So, Chloe, Riggs said, leaning down so his face was inches from hers. 50 grand in cash and a loaded weapon. In Rockford County, that gets you 10 to 15 years in a state penitentiary. But you see, my partner and I, we are reasonable men. We understand that taking a young woman like you to jail is just messy. Kendra turned her head slightly to look him in the eye. What are you suggesting, Deputy? I am suggesting, Riggs whispered, his voice laced with malice, that this money goes into the trunk of our cruiser as civil asset forfeiture. Unlogged, of course. And this gun? Well, an unregistered gun like this is useful. You walk away, get back in your car, and forget this ever happened. You tell anyone, and we run your plates, find where you live, and I promise you, a team of deputies will kick your door in at night. And sometimes, suspects get shot resisting arrest. It was a direct death threat, extortion, armed robbery, and conspiracy to commit murder. You are making a catastrophic mistake, Kendra said softly, her voice devoid of fear. The absolute lack of panic seemed to unnerve Brooks, who shifted uncomfortably behind his partner. You think you are smart? Riggs snarled, the gun still gripped tightly in his hand. He pressed the cold steel barrel of the Glock against Kendra's cheek. I could pull this trigger right now, plant a dime bag in your lap, and be cleared by internal affairs before breakfast. Nobody cares about a ghetto rat in a nice car. Kendra, that is it. We are moving in, Talbot yelled through the comms. Do not break cover until we have eyes. Kendra closed her eyes for a fraction of a second. The trap had been fully sprung. The audio was secured. The crimes were committed. Deputy Riggs, Kendra said, her voice dropping the frightened civilian act entirely. It was commanding, sharp, and authoritative. My name is not Chloe Davis. If you open the false bottom of that briefcase you just destroyed, you will find my real credentials. Riggs froze, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. He pulled the gun back slightly. What the hell are you talking about? I am Special Agent Kendra Sterling with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, she stated, locking eyes with him. And you have precisely 5 seconds to take that gun out of my face and put your hands behind your back, or you will spend the rest of your miserable life in federal prison. The neon lights of the chevron sign buzzed loudly in the agonizing silence that followed. For a moment, Riggs and Brooks just stared at her. Then Riggs let out a loud, mocking laugh. FBI? Riggs sneered, turning to his partner. You hear this, Tyler? The drug mule thinks she is a Fed. He turned back to Kendra, his eyes completely devoid of humanity. Nice try, but nobody is coming to save you. Deputy Vance Riggs's laughter echoed off the metal canopy of the chevron station. Harsh and entirely devoid of humor. He kept the barrel of the Glock 19 pressed firmly against Kendra's cheek, his finger resting dangerously close to the trigger guard. To him, the woman pinned against the hood of the luxury SUV was nothing more than a desperate criminal trying a pathetic last-ditch bluff to save her own skin and her illicit cash. You feds really need to work on your undercover wardrobe, Riggs taunted, his breath hot against her face. A cartel mule playing dress-up. That is a new one. Now keep your mouth shut while my partner grabs the zip ties. Deputy Tyler Brooks, however, was not laughing. The tall, lean officer had frozen near the open trunk of the Mercedes. A sudden, deep unease was creeping up his spine. Kendra's posture was entirely wrong for a civilian staring down the barrel of a stolen gun. There was no shaking, no pleading, no hyperventilation. Her eyes were locked onto Riggs's with the cold, calculated precision of an apex predator watching a mouse wander into a trap. "Vance," Brooks stammered, his voice betraying a sliver of panic. "Look at her ID again." "Shut up, Tyler." "Grab the ties," Riggs snapped, not breaking eye contact with Kendra. "I am not playing games with this street trash." Kendra did not blink. "You are out of time, Riggs." The deafening roar of a heavy diesel engine suddenly shattered the quiet night, drowning out the buzzing neon sign. Riggs barely had time to turn his head before the world exploded in blinding, strobing lights and deafening noise. It was not the standard red and blue of local patrol cars. It was a synchronized wave of blinding white tactical strobes and solid cherry red emergency lights. From the north and south ends of Route 119, 4 matte black armored Chevrolet Suburbans, accompanied by a heavy tactical Bearcat, materialized out of the darkness. They did not just pull into the gas station. They swarmed it with military precision, tires screaming as they boxed in the Dodge Charger cruiser and the Mercedes, effectively sealing off every possible avenue of escape. Before the vehicles had even fully stopped, the doors flew open. A dozen federal agents wearing heavy Kevlar vests, emblazoned with massive high-visibility yellow letters spelling FBI, poured out. They moved with terrifying speed, raising matty black M4 carbine rifles and aiming them squarely at the 2 deputies. "FBI, drop the weapon! Drop it now!" The commanding, amplified voice of Special Agent Warren Talbot boomed over a vehicle's PA system, vibrating the pavement beneath their feet. The blood drained entirely from Riggs's face. The heavy Glock in his hand suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. He looked at the dozen laser sights painting his chest in a terrifying constellation of red dots. His arrogant sneer vanished, replaced by an expression of absolute, unadulterated terror. "Drop the firearm, Riggs. Do it now or we will fire," Talbot roared again, stepping out from behind the reinforced door of the lead Suburban, his own weapon sighted directly on the corrupt deputy's head. Riggs's fingers went numb. The Glock slipped from his grasp, clattering loudly onto the concrete. He immediately threw his hands so high in the air, it looked as if he were trying to touch the sky, his knees visibly shaking. Brooks did not even wait for a command. He dropped to his knees beside the open trunk of the Mercedes, interlacing his fingers behind his head and burying his face in his chest, sobbing uncontrollably. "Hands behind your back. Do it." 4 tactical agents swarmed Riggs. They did not gently guide him to the ground. An agent grabbed him by the collar of his uniform, sweeping his legs out from under him and driving him face first into the unforgiving concrete. The sickening crunch of Riggs's nose breaking against the pavement was audible even over the idling engines of the armored vehicles. "Ah, my face! I am a cop! I am a cop!" Riggs screamed, spitting blood as heavy knees drove into his spine, pinning him flat. "You are a disgrace to the badge," Talbot spat, walking up and kicking the dropped Glock out of the way before crouching down beside Riggs's head. "And you are under arrest for armed robbery, extortion, and the attempted murder of a federal agent." Talbot pulled Riggs's arms back, the ratcheting sound of heavy-duty steel handcuffs echoing loudly as they were clamped down tight, much tighter than regulation protocol dictated. Kendra slowly pushed herself off the hood of the Mercedes. She calmly brushed a speck of dirt from her designer coat, her demeanor entirely unruffled. She walked over to where Riggs was being hauled to his knees by 2 massive tactical agents. Blood was pouring from the deputy's shattered nose, staining his uniform. Kendra reached up to the collar of her blouse. With 2 fingers, she pinched a microscopic wire hidden in the seam and gave it a sharp tug, pulling the small metallic transmitting node out into plain view. She let it dangle in front of Riggs's wide, horrified eyes. "Every single word," Kendra said quietly, her voice cold as ice. "Every threat, every demand for money, and the exact moment you pressed my service weapon against my face, it was all broadcast live to a mobile command center down the highway." Riggs stared at the wire, The reality of his situation crashed down on him with the weight of a falling building. His career, his freedom, his entire life destroyed in moments. "I was just trying to scare you," Riggs stammered, his voice cracking, a pathetic whine replacing his earlier bravado. "It was a tactical interrogation." "I thought you were cartel. Save it for the judge," Kendra replied, turning her back on him. She looked at Talbot. "Process them. Rip their cruiser apart. I want every inch of that vehicle logged. Then get a tactical team ready. We have a precinct to raid." Early the next morning, the real karma hit the Rockford County Sheriff's Department. Captain Ellis Montgomery was sitting in his plush corner office at the precinct, sipping coffee and reviewing the overnight arrest logs. He was a man who had built a comfortable, lucrative fiefdom in Rockford County, turning a blind eye to his deputies' tax collection on the highways in exchange for a healthy cut of the seized assets. He did not hear the front doors of the precinct open. He did not hear the heavy boots marching down the hallway. The first warning Captain Montgomery had that his empire was crumbling was the sound of his office door being violently kicked off its hinges. The heavy oak door slammed against the wall, splintering the drywall. Captain Montgomery leaped to his feet, spilling hot coffee down the front of his pristine uniform shirt. Standing in his doorway was Special Agent Kendra Sterling, flanked by Agent Warren Talbot and heavily armed federal agents from the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. Kendra held up a signed federal search warrant, slamming it down flat onto the captain's mahogany desk. "Captain Ellis Montgomery," Kendra announced, her voice echoing through the stunned precinct. "The FBI has taken control of this building. Step away from your computer and keep your hands where I can see them." "What the hell is the meaning of this?" Montgomery bellowed, trying to muster his authority. "You have no jurisdiction here. I will have the mayor on the phone in minutes. The mayor is currently being detained by the IRS Criminal Investigation Division," Kendra interrupted smoothly. "And you are being placed under federal arrest." The raid was absolute. Within hours, the FBI dismantled the precinct. They seized hard drives, physical logbooks, and hundreds of files from the evidence room. But the most damning evidence did not come from the computers. It came from the interrogation room back at the FBI field office. Faced with 20 to 30 years in a federal penitentiary for assaulting a federal agent, Deputy Tyler Brooks broke completely. He did not just flip on Riggs, he burned the entire department to the ground. During a grueling interrogation, Brooks confessed that the civil asset forfeiture racket was not just about lining their pockets. Riggs and Montgomery had been operating a protection racket for the very same drug syndicate Kendra had been investigating. The deputies were using their authority to rob rival dealers and low-level mules, seizing their product and cash and funneling a portion of it back to the cartel lieutenants in exchange for massive bribes. When Riggs pulled Kendra over, he thought he was robbing an independent contractor. He thought he was scoring cash for himself. Instead, he had unknowingly attacked the very agent sent to dismantle the operation he was secretly protecting. The federal trial of the United States versus Vance Riggs et al. Was a media circus. The courtroom of Federal District Judge David Hamilton was packed to capacity every single day. The prosecution's case was an impenetrable fortress of evidence. They played the crystal-clear audio recording of Riggs threatening Kendra's life. They showed the dashcam footage from the FBI Suburbans arriving. But the nail in the coffin was the banded cash. The FBI testified that the serial numbers on the bills had been meticulously recorded. When they raided Captain Montgomery's home, they found a portion of that exact same banded cash hidden in a wall safe, money Riggs had managed to text his boss about before the FBI completely secured his communications. Riggs's defense attorney tried to argue that his client was conducting a legitimate, albeit aggressive, roadside investigation. Judge Hamilton stopped the attorney mid-sentence. "Counselor," Judge Hamilton stated, his voice dripping with judicial contempt, "your client put a loaded firearm to the head of a federal agent to steal cash. Do not insult the intelligence of this court or the jury by calling that police work." The jury deliberated briefly. The verdict was a resounding guilty on all counts. When sentencing day arrived, Riggs stood before the judge wearing a bright orange jumpsuit and heavy shackles, a stark contrast to the uniform he used to hide behind. His nose had healed crooked, a permanent reminder of his arrest. Judge Hamilton looked down from the bench, his expression stony. Vance Riggs, you took an oath to protect the public. Instead, you acted as an armed thug, a predator terrorizing the citizens you were sworn to serve. You operated under the color of law to commit extortion, robbery, and conspiracy. You are a stain on the badge. The gavel came down with a thunderous crack. Vance Riggs was sentenced to a substantial term in the United States Penitentiary, Marion, a high-security federal prison with no possibility of parole. Tyler Brooks, due to his extensive cooperation with the federal government, received a reduced sentence in a medium-security facility. Captain Ellis Montgomery was sentenced to years for racketeering, corruption, and conspiracy. The Rockford County Sheriff's Department was disbanded entirely, absorbed by the state police, while a massive federal oversight committee restructured the county's law enforcement protocols from the ground up. Sometime after the trial concluded, Kendra Sterling sat in the office of the special agent in charge at the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. She was wearing a tailored suit, looking out over the bustling city. The SAC slid a small velvet box across the desk. Inside was the FBI Medal of Valor. You maintained your cover under the threat of imminent death, Agent Sterling, the SAC said, a rare smile crossing his face. You dismantled a cartel logistics hub and excised a cancer from a local police force in a single sweep. Outstanding work. Kendra looked at the medal, then closed the box. She thought back to that cold night at the Chevron station, to the sheer arrogance in Riggs's eyes when he thought he held all the power. He thought she was a victim. He thought she was helpless. Thank you, sir, Kendra said quietly. Just doing my job. She walked out of the office, ready for her next assignment. Out on the highways of Rockford County, the neon sign of the Chevron station still flickered in the night. But the roads were finally safe. The predators had been caged, trapped by the ultimate predator they never saw coming. The Rockford County takedown remains a master class in undercover law enforcement, proving that a badge is never a shield for criminality. Special Agent Kendra Sterling's unwavering bravery dismantled a corrupt network and delivered ultimate karma to rogue cops who abused their power. If you were captivated by this incredible real-life story of justice served, hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe to our channel for more true crime.